Alma and I are going to talk about voter registration. This is one of the things that I think concretely is going to be one of the things that I think all of us are going to spend probably some of the most time on in the next 60 days. When we're talking about the short time frame, we're talking about getting people out, turning out our community, and making that margin of difference in the critical sweeps, not just, of course, for the president, but also, of course, for members of Congress, local races, things that are going on in our counties, our cities, our school boards. Remember, that's where it all started, right? The Republican resurgence and a lot of their ability to, rebuild their party in the 90s and the last few decades was about starting at school board, right? Starting city council. And unfortunately, I think the Democratic Party spent a lot of time ignoring those things and not realizing that you need to build that bench so the next generation of folks can come up and challenge and be there and become leaders. So voter registration, something that I think, how many people here have done voter registration? All right, so pretty much everyone has. So I think what we can do is not spend too much time on the basics of how to do it, and just talk about maybe some particular tips and some of our top ideas and experiences. One thing I was going to start off with was to say, of course, the first thing you got to do is know what the rules and the laws are about registering voters in your state. Every state has different rules. In Texas, you have to actually go through a training and become deputized as a voter registrar by our tax assessor collector for the county. Right? It's kind of weird that the tax assessor does that, right? And then once you're deputized, you can then register people to vote. And there's specific rules that go with that as well. Your deputization expires every even numbered year. You have to renew it. It's complicated. And then other states, it's much easier to do so.
Pennsylvania, we have nothing. We just go out and get the registration and send it into the registration office, and that's it. We just have to make sure, if we are filling it out, that we have to write our names in. But other than that, it's much easier.
Right, but we don't have to go into too much detail of that because the New Organizing Institute has created this incredible organizing guide that lists the rules and the regulations for all 50 states.
One of the things I thought would be very useful, since most of you have done voter registration, is use some anecdotes to illustrate how we motivate people and how do we get people to register. I'm going to use 2008 as my backdrop because that's when we did a lot of the work, which we're continuing and using our experiences from the 2008 campaign. In Pennsylvania, there are these pockets where we have large Asian American presence, and we actually brought in surrogates with us and went knocking on doors. And this was in a commercial corridor where we were knocking, basically going into stores. And I came across this one Korean American man, a father and a son, who were running a jewelry store, successful clearly. And the father could not speak, could understand English, but couldn't speak it back. So we had with us a Korean American woman who could speak and do it back, translate back and forth. So I started talking to the father and asked, have you voted ever? Are you registered? He says, told me I will not register because the place that I have to go to register in their city hall somewhere, this was another county than my county, is very rude to me because I go there for other things. I go there for other issues that I have to do with my business, and they're extremely rude to me, and I don't want to go there. I said, okay, so they're rude to you, and let's not have them take away your rights by them being rude to you. So we had this back and forth conversation, and the main thing I did was listen. And then I said, why don't we get you, do your voter registration here, and then on the day that you have to vote, because you have to go back there, we will go with you. But before even that, we will actually call you and walk you through the voting process and send your son a link to the machine, how it looks. I mean, this is what Parag was talking about actually making personal connections. So we did that. I sent him the link, showed him got the picture for his county. All the voting machines are different in different counties. So sent him the link, did all that. And then the day off the vote, we called and said, would you like me to come? I said, I'm happy to come out and drive you to the polls. And he said, you know what, you inspired me to say I have to be braver than this. They're not going to be able to take away my vote, so I'm going on my own. And he did. And he voted for the first time. He had been a citizen for 20 years, and he had never voted. And so we called back after that, after he voted, and said, thank you. So now, 4 years later, I'm going to go back to that store again and thank him and then have him come and do voter registration have the same fears or the same, barriers that they've faced. So this is just a way of saying, these are how we engage people on the very person-to-person contact. And if we don't do that, it's wonderful to have tools. He'd never go there. He doesn't use this technology. So we have a whole realm of people who are not internet savvy, don't go there, use their local newspapers for information. We have to reach those newspapers. We have to talk to the reporters. We have to talk to all the different methods that touch one person in terms of information. And I think we have to know, that means we have to know the community. We have to know who does what, so the young man, his son is internet savvy. So we had a conversation with the son. So think about how much time we're spending in this one store when we have the surrogate who we want to keep going, but we didn't want those two people in the store to understand that we needed to move along. We needed him to think, and I was fully engaged, to say, let me hear your story, and then let's make a difference. So I think it's critical that while we can use all technology and all the tools that we have at our fingertips, and we should use them effectively, we cannot forget at the end of that line or end of the computer is a human being, and we have to learn how to touch them. And each one needs a different touch. So for example, if you're going to the Vietnamese community, you'll have to know the history. You will have to know, why are many Vietnamese folks still Republican? You have to understand about South Vietnam and North Vietnam. You have to sort of do a little bit of homework. So the tool for doing voter registration is doing some homework and planning. If you're going to a market, you need to talk to the owners of the markets ahead of time. So you're not going and looking incompetent, that's really not good, and saying, we're ready, we're clear, here, we'll register you.
So what I'd like to add to that maybe are some general tips about how to go about organizing some targeted voter registration drives. So one very sort of simple and straightforward thing, and you guys probably already do this to some extent, is you probably, if you do Asian American voter registration, is you look at your community calendars, right? You know about what's going on in your community. You need to make sure that you're linked into the various communities. What's coming up? Indian Independence Day Festival. We're there every year in Austin. We get 1,000 people that turn out to that event every single year. We have a booth there for the capital area Asian American Democrats. We make sure we have voter registration there. We make sure we talk to everybody there. We walk around with clipboards and we talk to all the participants. We get them engaged. Chinese New Year, has something going on. TED has something going on. We make sure that all of these events are on our calendars and that we know about it. More importantly, you need to have a good group of dedicated volunteers that are going to go with you to do the voter registration, preferably people from the community who know that community, right? So I don't always necessarily use the same volunteers for every event. I'm going to try to have Vietnamese American volunteers go to the Vietnamese American event. I'm going to try to have Indian American volunteers go to the Indian American event. But at the same time, you don't want to always be recruiting new sets of voter registration volunteers either, right? Number one, voter registration is something that you tend to get better at the more you do it, right? Really quick example. Juneteenth parade in Austin is a big voter registration event that we do every year. And when we go out there, right, we have a group of volunteers that will go out, and you'll just notice that some of the volunteers will go out there, walk around for an hour, and they'll come back with 40 voter registration forms. Another volunteer will go out and walk around for 3 hours and come back with 2, right? What makes the difference there, right? A lot of the difference, some of it is just because of natural shyness or people, having a more difficult or harder time talking to people, things like that. But a lot of times it's the ability to pick up on subtle cues when you ask people questions and when you ask them to register to vote. And then one thing that I've gotten very good at is reading on those cues, right? So when I go around walking, first of all, how do you phrase the question? Are you registered to vote? Not the best way to phrase the question. Are you registered to vote at your current address? Right? Are you registered to vote at your current address? That question embodies many messages at once. Number one, you're supposed to re-register to vote every time you move. A lot of people don't know that, right? By asking the question that way, you've instantly told them that's what they need to do, right? Number two, it reminds people who maybe knew about it but forgot that they needed to re-register to vote when they moved. Oh, right, I forgot to re-register to vote when I moved. It just slipped my mind, right? And it's a way to really target that question in a way to get people to think for a second, not just are you registered to vote. It's very easy to just walk by, yeah, whatever, right? Yeah. Are you registered to vote at your current address? Oh, yeah, let me think about that. Yes, I think I am. Okay, good. And then that reminds them, oh, I should vote, right? Now that I remember that I registered at my current address. But when you ask that question, I would say, look at people's eyes. Look at do they hesitate? If they hesitate for even a second, then I immediately follow up and I say, if you're not sure, it's probably best to go ahead and re-register anyway, right? If they pause for a second, I'm in a hurry. Hey, don't worry, it'll just take 30 seconds. Oh, yeah, I'd like to do it, but I'll just give me a form and I'll do it later. And I I still try to persist with them, right? Because a lot of times when people take that form, they go home, they completely forget about it, they don't put it in the mail. Right? If they really are in a hurry, then yeah, you hand them the form and you put it in the mail. But you really just got to learn to read those things. And having volunteers who are experienced, who turn out to the events over and over again, having that core group of voter registration volunteers helps people develop those natural skills, pick up on those subtle cues, but lets you get those numbers, right? And that's what makes the difference between the volunteer that comes back in 1 hour with 30 forms versus the volunteer that comes back in 3 hours with 2 forms.
And in Pennsylvania now, as in some other states, we have the added burden of voter ID law. We have a voter ID law that is making it very difficult for people to vote. New voters to register because they're requiring a certain specific form of ID. So what we're doing is turning this around, is saying, okay, this is the law. There's a lawsuit underway to overturn the law, but we're not depending on that to be successful. Whether it's successful or not, this is an opportunity to engage with people is how we're looking at it. So this gives us a chance to talk to more people. So you use the voter ID to say we're letting you know what do you need for your ID. Immediately it's making people aware. There's an election. A lot of people are not aware, by the way. And that it's soon, and that there are deadlines. If you don't do it by such and such date, October 9th is our cutoff for voter registration. So if the ID is checked, so this is how mean these people are. They have done the voter ID in a way that they're going to check the voter registration to see are you registered to vote in order to get your voter ID. If you're not registered to vote, you're not going to show up in those polls, right? So we're encouraging people to register soon, and it takes a while for all this paperwork to happen. And when we have a Republican governor who's slowing things down, so all of this is going to take time. So giving that urgency, the piece that Parag talked about, urgency, imparting that urgency to the voter